welcome back, folks. This is U.S. Home Talk, and we're live every Wednesday at noon on Facebook, YouTube, and of course, after the show, we'll be streaming and podcasted everywhere that you find your podcast. So we appreciate you tuning in. U.S. Home Talk. Jason Walgrave here with the Minnesota Real Estate Team, Walgrave Real Estate Group, and RE/MAX Advantage Plus. We've got Mortgage Michael Overson from Illuminate Bank. We've got Marcus Walgrave with Hague Realtors, and we've got the great producer / insurance guru, Evan Little. Thank you, Evan, for doing everything you do to make us sound relatively smart. Relatively smart, I might add.
Like 4 out of 10 smart.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost 50%.
That's 80% of 50%, which I'm good with that. You know what I'm saying?
Baseball, we're the greatest of all time.
Yeah, right. I love it. I love it. Folks, we did last week, we did have to retire Whisker Wally and Mustache Mike. So, our regular are back now. Evan's like, no, but
it's mustache summer, not mustache 1 week of summer. Pathetic.
Good point. You failed. All right, folks, got a big show this morning. We're gonna be talking about market updates, this crazy market that we're in. Going to give some examples of some deals that we've been working on and working through. We're going to talk a little bit about some other areas in the United States. The Yoda of Real Estate, Steve Perkins, sent us an article this morning talking about 5 big buyer markets in the U.S. So Marcus, we're going to hear from you on the Sioux Falls Empire real estate market. You guys got some great things going on here. Folks, you can ask questions during the show in the comment section via Facebook or YouTube. You can also text in your questions to our real estate hotline number. That text line is 612-234-7585. Text questions to that number during the show. And then keep that number, folks. That is our 24-hour real estate hotline number. You can connect directly with Mike, Marcus, Evan, myself, all of our fantastic U.S. Home Talk partners. That's the number. 24-hour real estate hotline number. Also, be sure to go to our website, ushometalk.com. You can find just some really fantastic information, all things real estate. Connect with all the partners. You can listen to past shows, and it's really a great resource. I'm really happy with our website. We rebuilt it a couple years ago now, and it's really it works well. A lot of really good resources and information about all things real estate. So be sure to check out ushometalk.com. Market updates. All right, here's what we're seeing, Marcus. Here's what's going on. I feel that we are moving into a buyer's market. In some cases, we already have. Some neighborhoods we already have. I have noticed more price reductions than I can remember. I mean, I'm talking. We'll pull up some stats for next week's show, but I mean, I'm thinking 8-10 years it goes back that far, at least in my mind, and the number of price reductions that we're seeing. And so a lot of price reduction. Inventory is up. I think I read something today in the U.S. inventory is at a 5-year high. So that's the U.S. as a whole, which is really good. Inventory is still low in our area when we're talking about a balanced market. I mean, we're still really low when you're looking at a balanced market, but the U.S. as a whole, a 5-year high is really good. Interest rates are, they've been pretty steady where they've been at, and right around that 6.5-ish, plus or minus a quarter, depending on what you're doing. I still think rates are going to get to the high 5s at some point this year. I don't really think rates are much of a concern for most buyers. I think folks have just accepted this is what they're at. We're going to be in the mid 6s, and this is what it is. And so let's go make a decision. Let's go make a purchase based on what that is. And that's okay. The 40-year average, remember, folks, the 40-year average fixed 30-year interest rate is 8.25%. So, we're nearly 2 points less than the 40-year average. There's a lot of opportunity for buyers out there right now. As we move into this buyer's market or more of a buyer's market. And of course, keep in mind, it's always property specific. So we're still seeing multiple offers. If a property is in a high desired neighborhood, it's got a lot of great features, it's in great shape, you price it right, good chance you're going to get multiple offers. One interesting thing, and I've got two examples of this, guys. 12 days ago, we listed two properties, so two new listings. I was pretty certain we were going to sell both of those over the weekend in multiple offers. Ironically, we did not. Weekend 1 came, next week, weekend 2 came, and then right around day 10 or 11 for both of these examples, we got multiple offers. So we got multiple offers, but it took almost 2 weeks to get those multiple. So the market's kind of weird right now. I mean, it's hard to predict how long things are going to take. I'm real hesitant to predict, anything right now because it's just kind of a strange market. We did get both of those listings sold. They both ended up with multiple offers, but it took about 12 days. So overall market is good. Our team is having a phenomenal year. We're having a, nearly record year with the amount of families that we're helping, buyers and sellers that we're helping. And so I feel really good about the real estate market, but it's changing. It's ever changing. And it feels like, week to week, every couple weeks, things are moving or not moving in a certain direction. And so even more important to make sure that you align yourself with a top agent and top loan officer, and make sure that you've got a team in place to help you with your real estate goals and your real estate needs. So, Marcus, what are you seeing in Sioux Falls? What's your market look like, and are you seeing some of the same things we're seeing up here?
Well, I kind of shared some of that our market stats last week. Some pretty incredible comparing year to date. Pending month of May compared to 25 to 24 of month of May. And we were up, I think it was like 68% more pending sales here. And so we have a lot of activity going on. Our new listings is up, but our inventory is quite a bit down because so many properties are moving. So I would say if you were to describe the Sioux Empire market, I mean, it'd be fair to say it's a seller's market. However, to your point, there are definitely price ranges in specific properties where it is a buyer's market. I know we kind of talked about this, Mike. You shared this about a month ago, that the Sun Belt, the Sun Belt market, right, and for the 55 and up communities, like they were taking big hits. That was a big buyer's market. Sellers were taking big price reductions, and what I've noticed here in the Sioux Falls area, the Sioux Empire, Sioux Falls, South Dakota metro, and it's kind of which I thought was a little bit of a surprise. But it's like that mid 300 price range. That is what seems to be turning into a buyer's market that we have down here. That might be, there may be another price range out there, but the one that I'm seeing is there's just a pretty significant influx of inventory in that mid to high 300s. Buyers are able to look at multiple properties. I think to your point, Jason, is that yes, you guys got multiple offers, but it happened on day 10. Yeah. And I think that's just a good explanation of or a description of what today's buyer is in a position of. They don't have to skip out on lunch. Reach out to their manager, their boss, or let their clients know, hey, I got to dip out for 2 hours. I got to go look at this house. They have the time. They can wait till the weekend. They can wait till they take a second look. Jason, you talked about third looks in some cases. Yeah. And I think that's a good description of today's buyers, especially in these price ranges where, you could describe it as a buyer's market.
Yeah. It's interesting because the two examples I'm giving, the one ended up selling for full price. multiple offers, but sold for full price. The other one did not. It did not sell for full price. Both buyers were made aware that they were in multiple offers, and neither buyer came up to full price. I mean, it was pretty close, but not. And so that was also fascinating because, historically, if you're in multiple offers, that home's going to sell for at least listing price. And in 99% of the cases, it's going to sell for at least list price. So, all these things are telling us that we're moving into that buyer's market, and but keep in mind though, guys, keep in mind this: most sellers are buyers. Most sellers are buyers. So even if you're if you're a seller, right, you got a house to sell, but you're moving into a buyer's market, because you're most likely going to be buying, you can offset that, that difference a lot of times. So, I wouldn't, if you're a seller, I definitely would not get, overly concerned about it moving into a buyer's market, especially if you're buying something, it's, chances are you're going to make it up on what you're buying anyway. So, but a lot of opportunity. We're seeing a lot of opportunity in new construction, a lot of opportunity in existing homes, off-market deals. Man, we're still doing a lot of off-market deals. And then, Mike Overson and his team at Luminate, I mean, holy smokes, they got programs to overcome, whatever hurdle you're up against if you're a buyer, right? And so whether you're a contingent buyer, you want to be a non-contingent buyer, or you're a finance buyer, you want to be a cash buyer. And so again, it's so important that you align yourself with the top loan officers and the top mortgage teams out there and top real estate teams. Because folks, remember from last year's stats, 98% of all real estate agents in the entire United States, 98% of them did not sell 10 homes. They didn't sell 98%, and so, it's so important that you're interviewing agents, you're asking the questions, what's your plan? What is your, do your buyer's agents have a buyer presentation? We do, and we just put one together, and a really, really good one last summer. We felt we needed to be more clear with how we represent buyers based on the NAR changes. If you're a seller, does this listing agent that you're interviewing, do they have a plan? Do they have a marketing plan? How are they going to sell your home for the highest amount in the quickest time? And, and if they don't have a written plan, why don't they have a written plan? And don't be afraid to ask the question, hey, how much business did your team do last year? How many homes did you sell last year? Those are all fair questions to ask. If I'm a consumer, I want to know this. I want to know that I'm working with the top 1 or 2% of agents, and because more experience will likely come, a better job, and a higher sale price on your listing, better negotiating strategies as a buyer's agent. So keep those things in mind. Mike, you guys are having a phenomenal year.
We're having a pretty good year. Absolutely. Yep. And one thing too that I haven't told you guys yet, because we literally just added this last week. We have a program now where, as long as you have the credit, we go no job, no income, no assets. As long as you have the credit and 40% down, you can get a loan, which is kind of crazy, right? So as long as you got a good enough credit score, and I think they'll go down to 660 or 680 on it.
Okay, so say that again. It's
no job.
You don't put a job, you don't put employment on the application, you don't put income, right? We just need to verify where the money is coming from, the down payment's coming from, and you got to meet a minimum credit score requirement, and that's it.
Is there a pulse required?
You do have to be able to fog a mirror. I guess if we could add that. We could add that maybe to the list of qualifications that you need to meet. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that those programs exist out there. Now, if people are going to hear this, they're going to say, well, oh God, are we going to go back to the 2006, 2007 craziness? Well, no, because you got to remember, back then you could do the same type of loan with zero down, right?
Yep.
And people were defaulting all the time. They had no skin in the game.
No
You have
skin
to
in
have
the game.
40. You got to have 40%
Yep.
down or more in order to do this type of loan in today's world,
Yep.
right? So you got the skin in the game. If you're gonna default on that thing, the bank's not losing because you put 40% down. You know, if they gotta take it back, they're gonna sell it and they won't lose. They won't lose on it and stuff like that. So
I like that program, Mike. I like that program because there's a lot of folks out there that are in a situation where they got great credit. Maybe they've never been late on anything in their entire lives. They got a significant amount of cash. Maybe they're in between jobs, or maybe they just, their job is they buy a business and they build it up and sell it, and then they're going to go buy. There's all these entrepreneurial based scenarios where you don't fit into the box, the traditional normal financing box, but people have the ability to put 40% down, and they got great credit, and they can show a history of not missing any payments. I mean, that for a bank, that's a good deal for a bank, and it makes sense.
it's just a makes sense deal, right?
Yes.
If you got good credit and you got that type of money, you obviously did something right along the way. And so if we're going to put 40% down, pretty safe bet right there, right? I mean, the chances of that going into default with someone with good credit like that and that down payment are pretty slim. They're not going to go into default with that much skin in the game. So, but as far as going back to our markets that we were talking about, here's what I'm seeing. I'm still seeing plenty of buyers lose in multiple offer situations. I sent out 5 pre-approval letters this weekend. 1 got accepted. The other 4 lost in multiples.
Wow.
Okay. So that's still out there, right? Now we're in
Yes.
the Minneapolis market. I do have a buyer in Duluth. I got a buyer in Laverne. I got a buyer in Sioux Falls. I got a buyer down in Florida. So I do kind of see the range of things. Up here in the Twin Cities, and the same thing I think is in the Sioux Falls area. I still think it's a seller's market. And if we look at it at a scale, right, there's a 10, right? The middle is 0. A 0 would be an equal buyer seller market. Then there's 0 to 10 on the seller side, where a 10 seller market was back in COVID, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to get for the house? I think it's worth $250. Okay, I'll get you $325.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That type of it's just stupid, right? We won't see that type of market ever again probably, but that's like a 10 sellers market. A 10 buyers market would be back in the crash in 2010 and 2011, where you could buy a townhouse for $50,000 in Apple Valley. That same townhouse sold 3 years ago for $250, right? That's a 10 buyers market right there when you get that type of deal. Those are rare cases. Right now, what I'm seeing in our market here in the Twin Cities, I still think it's about a 4 sellers market.
Yeah.
I would say roughly.
Yeah.
Sioux Falls, I think, is the same way. You go to Phoenix, Pahonix, right? Pahonix, Arizona. Got this article here. Their inventory is up 23% from last year. Okay, month over month, their inventory is up 23%. I would consider the Phoenix area probably like a 1 or 2 buyers market at this point, right? So it has swung from a seller's market to a low buyers market, a 1 or 2 buyers market. Tampa, Florida, same thing. I still think it's about a 1 or 2 buyers market down there, maybe even a 3 in some cases. But are we at that 6, 7, 8, 9 buyers market where it's like you can go, a $500,000 listing, you can offer them $450 or $440 and try to get that property? I don't think we're there yet. But in the Midwest, like you said, because their inventory is still so much lower than some of these other major markets that are, in the South, over in Florida, I still think, like I said, I think we're like a 4 sellers market up here.
Yeah. I think that's pretty spot on. So I think that's pretty spot on.
We're talking about kind of some price ranges, right? But there's also specific properties too. We're hearing a lot about how the condos and the HOAs, the insurance to take on these condo complexes, the insurance is spiking up on them. Using that Florida as an example, so it's not just price ranges where these buyers markets are coming out of the woodworks here. There are specific types of properties as well. Condos kind of being an example where it may be a seller's market top to bottom, with the exception of condos, for maybe the reason that the HOA cost is doubled because of insurance cost reasons. So again, what a great example on why you want to make sure that you're working with one of those top tier realtors who know the markets, whether it's a price range or it's a specific style of home that's out there that might be in that buyer's market.
Yeah, Evan, I wonder for next week's show, could you bring in some stats on insurance, cost differences compared, this year compared to last year. Maybe because we're definitely hearing it from our buyers, right? Like, oh God, my homeowners insurance was way more than I expected, or So could you bring in some stats next week and talk about how those homeowners insurance premiums have changed?
Well, I mean, we can talk about it next week for sure. The key is that it really varies region by region.
Sure.
Since we're U.S. Home Talk, in some areas it's going crazy, and in others there's basically no different year to year.
Okay. Yeah. I'd like to talk more about that next week and kind of dive into that. So, give you a week to prepare. Let's do our legal minute.
This is Jeff O'Brien, attorney with Hush Blackwell with the U.S. Home Talk Legal Minute. Suppose you're trying to sell your home and you enter into a purchase agreement with a potential buyer. Suppose that after the buyer completes his inspections, obtains approval for financing, and the title work comes back clean, the buyer states his intention not to close the purchase of your home. In other words, the buyer intends to breach the purchase agreement. What are your rights as a seller? Most importantly, can you as a seller force the buyer to comply with the purchase agreement and purchase your home? The answer is it depends. The seller would be seeking a remedy known as specific performance. This is what the law calls an equitable remedy, meaning that a court can award a remedy such as specific performance if it would be equitable to do so. Courts rarely award such a remedy, as money damages are usually an adequate remedy to a seller upon a breach of contract by the buyer. In other words, it is very difficult for a seller to force a buyer to purchase the property if the buyer breaches the purchase agreement. On the other hand, a specific performance claim brought by a buyer has a greater chance of success since each property is unique and there may be no adequate remedy for a buyer who is prevented from purchasing the piece of property which he or she contracted for. Determining your legal remedies upon the other party's breach of a purchase agreement, whether you're a buyer or seller, is an issue that requires consultation with your attorney. This is Jeff O'Brien, attorney with Hush Blackwell with the U.S. Home Talk Legal Minute.
Thank you, Jeff O'Brien. Appreciate that, buddy. So, folks, all in all, the market it's a summer market. We definitely feeling how much activity is going on right now. All markets are different, not just in the Twin Cities compared to Sioux Falls, but specific neighborhoods, right? And so important that you got somebody that's looking out for your best interests and representing you and your family at the highest level. We're gonna be talking more about insurance stuff next week. We're gonna be talking more about the market and what we're seeing and what we're doing. We'll bring in some more exciting topics. Marcus, are you joining us next week?
Yeah. I missed one show and all of a sudden it's like question on whether I'm going to be.
It's not that you only missed one show. It's that you set it up. I'm going to be gone for the next month, basically.
You said you were going to be gone all of June.
The entire month of June.
That's what I we
love the fact
under
that
promised,
you're
over delivered.
I just call it lying. We were lied to.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm here. So,
all right, folks, we do appreciate you tuning in today. Be sure to check out our website, ushometalk.com. We've got a real estate hotline number set up, 612-234-7585. Best way to get a hold of us anytime during the week. Jason Walgrave here, Marcus Walgrave, Mike Overson, Evan Little. Folks, we do appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next week.